Okay, I just wanted to give us a quick overview of the final deliverables. Several of you have had questions. So if you've been able to follow the readings and get involved with some of the things that are posted in the contents section, most of this will be straightforward. On page 2 of the syllabus, it says cases and final deliverables. So the final deliverable is a choice of one of these cases, either the original Wall Street movie with Michael Douglas, that would be one case. Kevin Spacey in Glengarry Glen Ross is another case. The Crooked E is a docudrama dealing with the collapse of Enron, the largest bankruptcy in American history. The Exxon Valdez docudrama entitled Dead Ahead is another one. And, you know, where it says down at the bottom of the first paragraph, the expectation is a paper complying with APA 7, 10 to 15 pages. For those of us that have attended or had discussions with me, private Zooms or whatever, you realize that I've given you three options for the final deliverable. One is to do a paper. Now, in point of fact, it does not have to be 10 to 15 pages. Approximately 8 pages, perhaps 10 pages, so 8 to 10 of content. You know, not counting the cover page, the contents page, reference pages, and so forth. So you're talking about 8 pages of content if you choose to do a paper. Now, I've given you two other options. One is PowerPoint, but if you choose to do a PowerPoint, it's got to be in notes view, because remember from PowerPoint that we put up basically the bullet points. Maybe you have a picture here, a couple of bullet points there, but there's no real depth to it. So the depth would come either on the side or on the bottom, depending on which version of PowerPoint you have. And that's called notes view. So if you do it in notes view, you'll be able to put in the detail. The third option is to do a video, an MP4. You know, basically it's a YouTube video, somewhat like we're doing here. You can certainly do that on these things. You know, you guys are just so skillful with what you can do on this, so you can do it as a blog. But I have to somewhat standardize it, so we're looking at an MP4 format. And so you can do it as a blog. You can have your notes here, you can have your recording device here, and you can do it as Joe Rogan. You can do, you know, whatever that type of blog. And the idea is that you're going to choose one of these cases. Now, maybe it's a case because you also had case assignments. So, you know, 2 cases, some did 3 cases, and so forth. But you know, if you did one of those, so for example, you did Dead Ahead, you know, the Exxon Valdez story, and you say, well, I did that as a case. Can I use the same thing for my final deliverable? The answer is yes. Take what you did, which was typically 3, maybe 4 pages, doing a case analysis. That's what the objective was initially. But now do an in-depth dive in that, because at the end of the semester, presumably you know a lot more than you did at the beginning of the semester as you were starting to do these cases and analyze them. So do a deep dive. So take what you've already done and expand on it. And really it's depth, because don't forget what we're looking at here is the idea of ethics and corporate social responsibility. But this is not a sociology class. So what we're looking at is take a moral ethical theory. For example, the baseline for this course is utilitarianism. So you've read about utilitarianism in DeGeorge, or if you didn't look at DeGeorge, you had it in the textbook, or if you didn't look at it in the textbook, you Googled it or whatever you did, but you have a pretty good understanding now of utilitarianism. Now, there are other types of utilitarianism. So, for example, more of a hedonistic approach to utilitarianism makes that argument about, well, if it feels good, do it. That's basically the happiness argument that some of you used in the discussion board. And it kind of tells me where you sourced it, because if you did utilitarianism based on some of the PowerPoints and other things that were in contents, it broke some of that down. And utilitarianism, basically, very simple overview is the max good for the majority affected. Now, when you start to bring in, well, it means happiness and all this, well, that's a particular brand of utilitarianism. But my point here is take that baseline utilitarianism argument, for example, the max good for the majority affected, and apply that to the circumstances of the particular case. Exxon Valdez, several of you have submitted things and you retold the story. Well, the ship ran aground and it spilled a bunch of oil and this happened and that happened. Yeah, got all that. So those are the details of the case, in a sense, the facts of the case, the issues of the case, the main issue and supportive or substantive issues that, are subservient to that main issue. But once you identify the issue and subsequent issues, well, now you have your argument. How do you determine good, bad, right, or wrong? Who were the so-called evil doers here, and under what theory were they wrong if that's the argument you intend to make? Well, so now you revert back to the moral ethical theories. Utilitarianism, max good for the majority affected. Well, okay. So that would be the right thing. So what's the wrong thing? I presume, and I'm not going to write your paper for you, but I presume it would be something along the lines of, well, the majority were hurt by this action, by the corporation, by the state government, by the federal government, et cetera. So you're making a utilitarian argument. Moral ethical theory, utilitarianism, applied to the fact pattern of the case. What else might you do? Well, I've long stated that you change the moral ethical theory and potentially you change the outcome. So if something is deemed under a utilitarian argument to be, in quotes, wrong, well, what if I take, and I'm giving you a ridiculous example here, but what if I take something that refers to ethical egoism? Because that is also a moral ethical theory, which basically, simplified, says it's right if it's the right thing for me. In other words, if it's good for me, it's the right thing to do. Wow. Now, there's a lot between utilitarianism and ethical egoism, to be sure. And there are dozens of other moral ethical theories. So we're using utilitarianism as a baseline. Apply that theory to the facts of the case. Choose, because a powerful tool is to compare and contrast. So compare and contrast using another moral ethical theory and see what that does to the outcome. In other words, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it good? Is it bad? All this kind of nonsense that we tend to want to do. So that's the essence of what you're doing. That's your final deliverable. Yes, you can use one of the cases you previously worked on. Why not? Sure. If it makes life better for you because you don't have to start from page one, terrific. We're after objectivity, not your personal opinion. Why? It's not personal. Don't take it badly. But we're not interested in your personal opinion. Why? Because we're not experts in the field. Unless you have a hidden PhD that I'm not aware of, well, you're where I sat a bunch of years ago. And so what do? Nobody cares what we think. We're there to learn and build our resume. So that's what we're doing. So I'm not interested in your personal opinion. Well, I think this, or I feel as though, forget that. That's a non-starter. Apply moral ethical theory. Now that we have a good understanding of different moral ethical theories, apply that to the facts of the case. Compare and contrast with another moral ethical theory. Outcomes undoubtedly will change, so highlight that. 8 pages probably is enough. I mean, I don't know how you write, so it's a tough one. People say, how many pages do you? Well, if you're only capable of 7 pages and I said 10, what would you do for the last 3? Probably load your double-barreled BS gun and just, put a bunch of nonsense out there. So don't do that. But I mean, if you're writing 2 or 3 or 4 pages for a final deliverable like this, that's absolutely college light, and I don't see any way you could possibly do justice to what we're trying to do in that short a document. But again, If I had to guess, 8 pages. If you do 9, it's 9. If you do 10, it's 10. If you do 7 and they're extraordinarily well written and you've covered the points, well, that's probably okay. I don't know. I don't know how well you write or don't write. That's if you choose to write a paper. Again, you can do a PowerPoint, but if you do a PowerPoint, do it in notes view. How many slides? I don't know, 10 slides. What does it take you to convey what you need to convey to me? If you don't want to do either of those, because writing a paper, I mean, that's 50-year-old stuff. PowerPoint, well, that's certainly 20 or 30-year-old stuff. What's the new thing? Wow, the new thing is blogs and blogging and so forth. Do a blog. It doesn't have to be well done. I mean, you see what I do. I sit here in front of the screen. I put out a bunch of stuff. There's no fancy studio. There's no anything, but I try and convey what it is I feel I need to convey. Do something like that, because after I get done recording this, I end up uploading it to YouTube. I take that, um, um, you know, that URL, if you will, that link, and I post it somewhere, or I send it to you in a message or in an announcement. Just put it in contents or something, and then you click on that, you get this. Lucky you. But that's what we're doing for our final deliverable for this course. Any issues, reach out, email me, but that should cover it. Hopefully this is helpful. And again, email, we can certainly have a private Zoom. Enjoy the rest of your day.